Saint Bonaventure was born in what is now Italy, just a few years before Saint Francis himself died. So Saint Francis would have died when Saint Bonaventure was maybe around 4 or 5 years old. And he grew up, again, with this resurgence of that faith, especially as promulgated by Saint Francis, who did so much to go out and to proclaim the gospel to all peoples, to be that example of holiness for others. And that Franciscan movement, founded that order, and many people flocked to join the Franciscans and to follow the example of Saint Francis himself. And Saint Francis is a great saint, worthy of looking up to him. But it's also fair to say that Saint Francis was maybe not a great organizer. And as the Franciscans grew so quickly, with so many people joining the order, there were a number of pretty serious struggles for them, trying to figure out how to do things. What does it mean to live in community? What does it mean for the Franciscans, and how they're meant to act and operate and support themselves, and all these other things. And so when Bonaventure joined them, he was very intelligent, very smart. He had gone to a number of different universities and even taught. And at the age of about 36, he was made head of the order. And he kind of went about reforming it to establish it for generations to come, to bring some of that order that maybe St. Francis lacked a little bit in his founding. And one of the things that created a number of tension and division amongst those Franciscans is, again, St. Francis died at a pretty young age. He was about 44 years old. And so those who were left in the order, a lot of them were wondering, well, what would Francis want us to do? And he didn't necessarily leave good instructions about the best way to be a Franciscan. And there were questions, well, should we be, that mendicant? Should we be that poorest of the poor, living amongst the poor, as kind of that example of that itinerant life that St. Francis sought to live? Or others said, well, should we go to university? Should we, get basically like doctor's degrees and teach and instruct along those lines? And there was a lot of different divisions. And there still are amongst the Franciscans. You see a lot of different takes on Francis in a number of different Franciscan orders. And one of the things that St. Bonaventure tried to do is to take a little bit of that middle way. He opposed the simple, what he called the spiritual ones who wanted to just be poor and live among the poor. And he didn't say it's also a good idea to be, educated and in universities and teaching as professors and things like that, because that's not really following what Francis wanted. And yet he said that other option is not really going to be that long-term solution. He viewed it as an order that could complement the parish priest, that could assist those parish priests who were oftentimes in his day and even now basically overworked and underprepared, and oftentimes not as well educated or well trained in the faith as like religious orders could be, who could dedicate more time to that. So they could be there amongst the people as spiritual directors, as teachers, while also living that radical gift in poverty and chastity, obedience. And so he sought that middle way. And again, it helped be almost that second foundation of the Franciscan order. And he himself lived in great poverty, basically foregoing all of those different luxuries of life, making sure that he was working. And even when they came to basically make him a bishop and told him that he couldn't refuse, he had to obey, he was at the monastery washing dishes himself. And said, "You'll have to wait till I finish the dishes and then I'll meet with you." He was very humble himself and very much sought to live out that spirituality of St. Francis, but in a way that had to be adjusted to the realities of a changing situation and a changing world, where St. Francis could do something that was different when there were just, a handful or a dozen Franciscans with him. When you have hundreds or thousands, things have to look different. And one of the things that I think we can learn from this is to acknowledge that sometimes situations in life, circumstances change. And it's not enough just to say, well, this used to work, and I'm going to hold fast to that. Sometimes you have to say, okay, that worked in that situation. But as things change, we have to say, well, how do we also maybe need to change or adapt so that it can work now in a way that is faithful to what was before, but that is current for what our situation is. And I think one of the things that we face in the church is a lot of young people like yourselves. A lot of young people maybe are on fire with the faith, maybe love to pray, love Jesus. And then yet what we see is very often as they start to grow up, and studies say sometimes as young as like age 13, or sometimes in high school, there's a switch or a change or a question that comes up. And I think for a lot of people at that age, they then look back and say, well, this is what worked. And they see, well, those are things for little kids. Those are things for babies. And I'm not a little kid anymore. I'm almost an adult, or I am an adult. And I'm moving on from those baby things. And so they turn away from the faith. They turn away from what they used to do or used to know. And I think part of the problem is part of the way that we present the faith to children, but also part of the realization that it's okay to say things can change as we grow older, that we don't need to do it the same way, live the faith the same way as when we were children, that it is something that is meant to grow with us, to be transformed. Still staying true to the original, still absolutely in that truth, but it is going to look different. And we have to apply it in different ways as we age. And it's one of the things that I want to encourage you, to remind you, that as you grow, things will look a little bit different. And that's okay. As long as you hold to that truth that has been handed on to you, you might live it slightly different when you're 15 or 25 than when you're 10 or 8. St. Bonaventure is a good reminder for this. He is a good reminder of how we bring what we believe into the world to make it effective, to continue to transform our lives, and to lead us always to Christ.